Central rivals go head-to-head this weekend when the Pirates face the Cubs at Wrigley.
Swing and a miss. He struck him out.
The pregame at 3 Eastern, first pitch at 4. Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app.
Coming up on the Best of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast, 2 college football Hall of Famers join the show. Former Auburn running back Bo Jackson talks about Gus Malzahn and the Auburn program, plus legendary Florida State coach Bobby Bowden sounds off on Jameis Winston. It's the Best of the Finebaum Show podcast, and it starts right now.
This is the Best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Next guest won a couple of national championships, had one of the greatest runs ever in the history of the game. I think it was 12 straight years in the top 5. He is a Hall of Fame coach, and we are delighted to welcome Bobby Bowden to our program. Coach Bowden, it is a pleasure, and it's been too long. Good afternoon.
Paul, it's good to talk to you.
I'll never forget my proudest moments of my career. I ran into you in Tuscaloosa a couple of years ago, and I served as your caddy for a while. You were getting your bag out of the car. I said, let me grab that. I didn't realize it was one of those old Ben Hogan bags that weighed 400 pounds, but I lived to tell about it.
One of the best caddies I ever had. I still thank you.
Well, what's going on in your life other than playing golf?
Well, you know, I play about once a week, but I speak a lot. I spoke in Atlanta last night, and I've got to go down to Orlando in a couple of days to speak down there. So I'm probably averaging about 2 a week. Some weeks I'll have 5, some weeks I'll have none. You know, so but I'm speaking a lot, staying busy.
Well, let me ask you, when you go out, and I mean, obviously football fans change over the years. I know you're asked a lot about the past and your great teams and the great players, but when you talk about the current game, talk a little bit about what you hear from fans and what you think of it in relation to the way it used to be.
Well, you know, the way I look at it, of course, that's one thing about being retired. I can watch them all now. When you're coaching, you can't. You can only watch your own team. But I think football's I think it's the best now it's ever been. I just think it keeps getting better. That is on the field. It's off the field that we're having all the problems, you know. And but I think on the field, I think it's good as it can be, especially if you're an offensive coach.
And certainly discipline and off-field issues have always been out there. And not to go back to something close to you, but Jameis Winston was many people felt like he was an embarrassment to your great University of Florida State. He won the Heisman, won a national championship. He was the #1 player chosen, but the controversy never seemed to leave him, including on the day he was selected. He's sitting there in Bessemer, Alabama on one of the greatest nights of his life. And, you know, he flashes the crab legs. I mean, what are your thoughts about Jameis Winston?
Well, I think it's a consensus among Florida State fans and boosters that he was an embarrassment in a lot of ways to the university. He won a lot of ball games, probably one of the best football players that ever attended Florida State, but he hurt himself off the field. And the good news is he's young enough to get over that. You know it? And but he's got to do that. He just can't make those junior high school decisions that he made when he was in college.
Coach, it didn't seem like Jimbo Fisher had much control over him. I know you've had to deal with that throughout your career, but I don't know if Jimbo ever called you for advice. But what did you think of the way Coach Fisher handled Jameis Winston?
Well, I think he handled him like most coaches would. There'd be some that'd be more strict. He could have been suspended a little bit more for his actions, you know. And but Jim is faced with what all head coaches are faced, and that is having a great player and trying to save him through problems. You know, sometimes it's best not to. Sometimes do your best, you know. And so he did a pretty doggone good job of getting Winston through his career at Florida State University, although, you know, a lot of people probably were not happy with it.
No doubt. Talking to Coach Bobby Bowden, just in terms of the game today and the 4-team playoff, you didn't deal with that. You dealt with one game, and sometimes at various points in your career. We didn't even have that game, the BCS championship. What did you think, and what do you think of the 14 playoff and where it goes in the future?
Well, I coached 57 years, and I played it 10 years before that, or was involved in it 10 years before that, and we never had a playoff. We got to the championship 5 times. I kind of like that, And so when they first came up with first place, I did not think they would ever get that by the administrators, by that I mean a playoff. But they did. They got 4 games playoff by the administrators. They approved it. I really believe that's as far as it'll go. Now, after the playoff, I liked it. Before I didn't like it. I liked the way it used to be, But after it was over, I liked it. I was glued to my seat, boy.
Coach, the current state of college football in recent years has revolved around Alabama school that is very close to you. You put a little time there. It's your home state. Right now, it looks like Urban Meyer, someone you know pretty well, competed against, has taken it over. How would you compare and contrast Nick Saban versus Urban Meyer?
That's a pretty good matchup right there. But let me mention this to you. When the Southeastern Conference, did they have 7 games in a row that they had won the national championship?
Yes, 7 straight.
7?
Seven straight, Coach. Yes.
Well, so I predicted several years ago, I said the first team that will break that string will be Ohio State. I said that because Ohio State is one of those universities that has all the resources in there in a state in which they can dominate. And then when Urban Meyer goes up there with 2 national championships under his belt, I felt like they are going to be the next team to be reckoned with. Well, I missed it. Florida State sneaked in there one year and did it before Ohio State. But you have 2 fine football coaches in Urban. I had to play against Urban my last 3 years, I think, at Florida State, and I was amazed at how thorough he was in coaching. And yet, I've never seen a coach more thorough than Nick Saban. I mean, that's a toss-up there. You start comparing those 2. That's a toss-up. It's strictly who's got the best players.
I mean, there was a time, and it was 2 years ago, Coach Bowden, that some of us were ready to declare Nick Saban on the same level with Bear Bryant. That obviously isn't being discussed anymore, but you've seen a lot of coaches in your time. Let me get your thoughts on Nick Saban.
He could still make it. It's just according to how long he wants to stay in the game, because his start is unbelievable. What he's done is already unbelievable to me, but it's so hard to win a national championship. We played for that thing 5 times, and 3 times in succession, and we only won 2. We just simply couldn't put them back to back, and he's had a little difficulty in that himself. Although I think he did have 1 back to back, and hey, Bear Bryant, you're talking about my idol.
No doubt. Coach, I've been asked this question many times, and I've spoken to you about it, and I simply don't remember the specifics, so I'll let you take a shot.
Yeah.
Many people still wonder about the late 80s, the early 90s, when the SEC expanded and Florida State was being wooed at one point pretty seriously. You obviously chose to go to the ACC. What happened?
Well, you're exactly right. That was when the conferences were beginning to add teams. And we had an invitation from the ACC to join them, and we were the only one they were wanting to join. I mean, it wasn't like us and somebody else. Florida State, we want you in the ACC. Now, at the same time, the Southeastern Conference came to talk to us about joining the SEC. And we had more of our administrative people were ACC background. And I'll tell you the truth. I've said this before. I was in favor of the ACC. I felt, Paul, that it was too difficult to win through the SEC to win a national championship. I felt like our best route would be to go through the ACC, and that did prove out to be correct. Because I don't know if we could have made it through the SEC.
A lot of people, including Steve Spurrier, used to snipe about that, saying that that his record against you wasn't very good, and part of the reason he said, Coach Bowden, was because you didn't have much of a schedule. You played, which is debatable, but you were certainly lambasted. I had a little criticism of that as well. How did you react to that? And now with some time to reflect, how much stock did you put in what Spurrier used to say in relation to your game against him?
Hey, can anybody needle you better than Steve Spurrier? No. He's a world champion needler, and I like him, to be honest with you. But again, it goes. My goal always was to win a national championship. I want to win a national championship, and going through the ACC was the best chance. That's a little bit tougher now. The ACC's gotten tougher. They've gotten better, and but that's the way I voted to go. It was really we voted. I mean, I didn't swing a vote at Florida State University. The administration was a lot stronger than I was, but that's the way they wanted to go too. And I went right along with it. And I thought the end results were good. Now, the way we got there might not have been as impressive. But you know what? 10 years from now, who'll know?
Finally, I think I said you were the top 4 or 5 for 12 years now. I think it was more like 14 or 15. But let me ask you finally, because I remember talking to you about this and writing about it and watching it unfold in real time. But in 1987, Ray Perkins had just left Alabama. You were in Birmingham, I think in a bowl game. Yep. There, and the Alabama job was open. They interviewed you, and somehow, some way, inexplicably, they went with Bill Curry instead of Bobby Bowden. I know you've been asked about that before, but it's one of those trivia questions that befuddles almost everyone, because you went on that run after that of several national championships, 5 game appearances, and I don't think you were out of the top 5 for 14 or 15 years. Meanwhile, Alabama was on probation and firing coaches. What do you remember about that?
Paul, I can remember that very vividly, because I always thought my calling would be to end up at the University of Alabama. I just said that's the way things are going to work out. And so we were up there playing. By the way, that's the first time I met you, by the way, that week. And so I'm coaching up there, and all of a sudden the coach at Alabama resigns. And everybody came in to talk to me. A lot of the big Alabama people came to me, and we want you as the head coach. And they said that the president wanted to talk to me. And I explicitly said, look, I'll talk to him if he's offering me the job, but I'm not going to go there and apply for a job. I've got a good job. So anyway, I was taken over to meet I was taken over to what I thought was to meet the president and maybe a couple of big alumni. And so I walk in there, there's 17 people in there, man. And I thought, hey, I'm getting interviewed. And so I felt like that was just a formality. But when I walked out, I walked by the president, he said, we'll see you later. I said, hold it now. I was expecting you to offer me the job. And I had already made up my mind I would have taken it at that time. But he didn't. He had somebody else in mind. As soon as he said that, I remember I went home and got my name out of it pretty quick.
Yeah, and Coach, I reported this the next day or the day after that night. I remember you did withdraw, and they hired Bill Curry. And while this was going on, I called a very prominent Alabama trustee, and I said, so what's the deal on Bobby Bowden? He said, well, I mean, we obviously like Bobby, but we felt like his age was a factor, just too much baggage there. Of course, you played for 5 national championships and weren't out of the top 14, right. top 5 for 14 straight years after that.
Hey, I could have saved them a little money now. You know what? I could have saved them a little money, but that's the way it was meant to be. I just felt like, as I look back, I can say, well, Bobby, you were meant to be at Florida State, and so that's the way it worked out.
It worked out pretty well, Coach.
Yeah, I was very fortunate.
What a pleasure. What an honor to talk to you. Thank you so much.
I'm going to Tuscaloosa Sunday to play in that golf tournament. I need a caddy.
I can loop 36 on Sunday, Coach. I'll be there.
Good to talk to you, buddy.
Thank you, Coach. Great to visit with you. Wow, what an interesting conversation there with Coach Bobby Bowden. We'll recap it in a moment, but I heard him pretty clearly. We'll go back and listen to the tape, but I'll paraphrase. But he essentially said Jameis Winston was an embarrassment to Florida State.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Larry is up next. What do you say, Larry?
Hey, man, it's been bigger news since Bin Laden got smoked. So
You got that, Larry? You got that right, Jack.
Jack. Hey, I got ambushed yesterday. What we old Vietnam veterans call a successful ambush, Paul. That darn Big Ten John, that Whitey beefcakes ambushed me. You know, they know what I'm talking about, Jack.
I knew what you were talking about. It didn't offend me, even though I was unable to hear it.
My buddy was calling me, ragging me, son. I'm talking about what? But you know what, Bobby Bowden? You talking about best call of the month? How about the year? I mean, and I'm so mad about the president didn't take the man. Of course, you know, he said it went out, played out like it's supposed to play out. But my God, what a missed opportunity. Can you imagine if he had went and coached at the University of Alabama and then Saban, you know, come on in later? I guess it would have been, maybe could have worked like that. But still, what a chance we missed. What an opportunity, dude. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, Larry, I was in the middle of that, and so was Bobby. I mean, obviously Bobby was, but I remember talking to him several times about it. And there's a lot more to it. When we have time, I'll go into it. I mean, he was embarrassed at that interview. I mean, he was asked questions that were disrespectful, outrageous, and it just showed how poor leadership. And not only did Alabama miss on him, it'd be one thing if they'd hired someone really qualified. I mean, they hired someone that I don't know how much you remember, but I mean, Bill Curry was. Yeah, I mean,
Bill Curry was a chump. I'm gonna tell you something. When he grabbed that boy by the face mask in the Sugar Bowl with Miami, I mean, I wanted to run out there on the field and put an ass whooping on him. You know, Bill Curry had no play. He was too.
Larry, I wish you had.
Oh, brother, I love it. But as in wrestling, the RKO, Jack.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We welcome everyone back to the program. Andy Staples from SI.com. First reporting the Everett Golson visiting the University of Florida. I'm surprised, Andy, with you living down there. Did he come to your house for coffee or what?
I'm not home.
Oh, okay.
I'm out of town. I would have said hi. I would have at least shown him where the good pizza places are.
No doubt. So, first of all, let's talk about the Everett Golson tour over America. This is one of the biggest rock tours of the summer. What do we know, and where does it go from here? Does he do 100 dates like Kenny Chesney, or just a few?
Well, if it were Kenny Chesney, he would actually wear the jersey of school and proclaim himself a lifelong fan of said school everywhere he went.
Exactly.
But you know, in this case, I think it's a fact-finding tour. I'm not exactly sure where the itinerary goes from here. I would think that he'd probably like to visit a few more schools. Georgia, maybe LSU, South Carolina are all logical places, but not really sure where those schools are at in terms of are they interested. I do know the interest is mutual with Florida. Interest seems to be mutual with Florida State, and you know he's also got to deal with, if he chooses an SEC school, when the SEC changed its graduate transfer rule last year to allow the guys with 1 year of eligibility to do it, they included some language in it that said you can't have been suspended for any length of time or faced, I think the exact language was significant disciplinary action at your old school. Well, he was suspended for an entire semester from Notre Dame. That's a case where, you know, they've got to figure out, will he get a waiver from the SEC office? I think he could. I think he'd probably be able to, because the spirit of that rule is to avoid a Jeremiah Masoli situation where, you know, Ole Miss took him in 2010 because he'd just been kicked off the team at Oregon. Golson, he cheated on a test in the business class. He got caught. He got kicked out. And he served his suspension, and then he went back to the school that kicked him out. So I think in this case, he's not really running from a punishment.
Andy, you've seen him play. We've all seen him play. Is he worth all this conversation?
It just depends on what your quarterback situation is. Like, I see a lot about South Carolina with him because he's obviously from Myrtle Beach, and that would make sense. But, from what I've heard, the Gamecocks are pretty excited about Lorenzo Nunez, the freshman that got coming in from Georgia. So if you think he's your quarterback in the future, I'm not sure you worry about it. You worry about taking another guy. You just bring him in and let him play if he can beat the Connor Mitch and the other guys out. If you're Florida and you don't necessarily feel like Treon Harris or Will Greer's the guy, maybe you give it a shot. Everett Golson has what every coach wants, and that is a rocket arm. He has one of the stronger arms in college football. But he's got some issues, too. He had huge fumbling problems at Notre Dame, just drove Brian Kelly crazy with ball security issues. But he has that arm. And I don't think there's a QB coach in the country or offensive coordinator in the country who's not going to take a chance on that arm if he's not completely happy with the quarterback situation.
Andy, moving beyond him, because there's only so many times we can hit our head against the wall on Everett Golson, but we are beginning to hear various predictions and prognostications, and this kind of thing changes throughout. But right now, where are you, first of all, on the SEC, then we'll move on to the national championship?
The SEC is tricky because the West almost comes down to schedule. Who's got the more favorable schedule? I feel like if Auburn gets much better defensively under Will Muschamp, which, his past history suggests they will, I think they would be the team to beat in the SEC because everything you hear about Jeremy Johnson is the guy's going to be very good at quarterback. That offense is probably going to go back to more of what it looked like before Cam Newton, where it's a lot more throwing, a lot less quarterback running. But I just think if you put those things together, if that defense plays as well as it could under Muschamp, that's going to be a tough team to beat. So that would be the one I would probably single out as a favorite. Though, I mean, let's face it, in the West, I think anybody can beat anybody. I don't think there's anybody head and shoulders above anybody else. And then, as far as the national championship goes, Ohio State's a team to beat. They are loaded. You saw how good they were at the end of last season, and they can be even better this season.
Yeah, and Andy, I mean, right now I think that will be the universal pick, and you can pick and choose why they won't win, but you'd have to stretch. Beyond them, others seem to really like TCU. It's hard not to like TCU as we get closer to the silly season of give me your Final Four. I think I know two of your Final Four. Who else?
Yeah, I like TCU, but the thing about TCU is it's hard not to like Baylor also. Mm-hmm. Baylor brings back everybody but Bryce Petty, basically. And they have a 400-pound tight end. How can you not love them? So when they bring back so much, you have to expect that they're going to keep coming. And so I don't know that you can – it's even though they finished 5-6 last year, Baylor and TCU, it's hard to think that both of them would get in, especially when they play each other right at the end of the season. So I'd say the winner of that game would be one of them, but I'm not sure that they both would be in that mix. And then I think if Deshaun Watson stays healthy for Clemson and Brent Venables can replace, I mean, he's got a ton to replace on that front four defensively, but if their defensive line stays healthy and Watson is healthy all season, Clemson's going to be pretty darn good. And Watson he might be the most exciting player in college football if he's healthy.
Okay, I've got three now. Are you going to leave us hanging on the fourth?
Man, I got to pick a fourth. It's hard because I don't know. Do I pick?
And by the way, if you don't pick an SEC school, you immediately get ejected from your seat.
But I have no SEC schools in there, do I? Let's put Auburn in. Throw Auburn in there. If Auburn wins the SEC, okay. There you go.
That was very unconvincing, by the way, Andy.
Because I don't know who's going to win the SEC, Paul.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, let me make it easier. Forget the West. Who wins the East?
I think it's got to be Missouri or Georgia, right? Like Missouri's bringing back a bunch of guys. They've won 2 in a row. Georgia, finally, some returning guys on defense. Second year under Jeremy Pruitt on that defense. Brian Schottenheimer taking over the offense. We don't exactly what it's going to look like. But Mark Richt's still the head coach. They got linemen back. They got great backs. They got some good receivers. I think those two are the teams to beat in the East right now. I mean, Tennessee is better, but Tennessee is one of those that the first 22 are really good. They have some injuries. They're going to have some problems.
Looking at the SEC total, I mean, we've heard you mention Alabama, Auburn, obviously Georgia and Missouri. This is when it really gets even trickier, but if you had to pick a dark horse to get to Atlanta from either side, where would you throw your dart, and how would you come up with this?
I don't know if you call them a dark horse necessarily, because they were pretty darn good last year, but Ole Miss.
Okay.
Because I think teams are going to have a really hard time scoring on Ole Miss. And if they can get it going offensively, whether it's Kelly at quarterback or something else, I think they can be a very, very good team. I mean, Laquan Treadwell, I hear his rehab's going great, so he's going to be one of the better receivers in the country. And you look at that defensive line at Robert Condisi, he's going to be one of the best players in the country. I just think people are going to have a real hard time scoring on them. And if you don't have your quarterback playing really well, and you know, when you look around the SEC, there's not a lot of evidence of experienced good quarterbacks. I think they're going to give people a lot of problems.
Well said and well done. Thank you very much, Andy. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Paul.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Let's check in with Bobby in Birmingham next. Hey, Bobby.
Hey, how you doing today, buddy?
Pretty well, bud.
Well, I'm glad you're back.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Yeah, if I had known you coming to Birmingham yesterday, I'd have made you a cake.
Well, I appreciate that. Unfortunately, I was only there about 3 hours. But I will be back soon.
Well, let me know.
Okay. No, I should be back there very quickly. I'm working on something that.
Oh, it was Golson Paul. He's not a quarterback, Paul. Just like football Johnny. I tried to tell you about football Johnny, but Golson not a quarterback, Paul. He's inconsistent. He can't comprehend. And to be a quarterback, you got to be able to comprehend. You got to be consistent. Let me ask you something, Paul. What do you think about old Tom Brady, Paul?
I'm somewhere in the middle on the Tom Brady situation. I thought the punishment was excessive. I thought it was a complete overreaction to the public. But he committed the unpardonable sin right now, and it's not necessarily of doing the crime. It's the cover-up, and that's what he's paying for.
But you know what, Paul? You know what I'm worried about, Paul?
What's that?
I'm worried about the ball boy, Paul. The ball boy got suspended indefinitely without pay. What if the ball boy is married with a family, Paul? But Tom Brady, from what I understand, he lied, Paul. And whether it's a white lie, a small lie, a big lie, I was always taught that a lie was a lie, Paul. My dad always taught us, say, if a man will lie, say he'll steal, Paul.
I agree with you on that, Bobby. I completely agree with you on that.
But they find the Patriots $1 million. It's just like me paying $1, Paul.
No, that's exactly. No, the $1 million fine is just part of the deal. But the first round draft choice hurts. Although usually with the Patriots, it's not that critical.
They got a good team anyway, Paul. That won't hurt them. But
I will be shocked. I will be shocked if that 4-game suspension holds up. It will be. I'm not sure it will be cut in half, but it won't be 4 games.
But Paul, what we telling the children, Paul? We telling the children it's all right to lie.
No, we're not. I mean, listen. I doubt sincerely that there are many young people who haven't seen this 1,000 times before. I don't think Tom Brady pushing a deflated football is really going to affect too many young people in this country.
But it's not about the football, Paul. It was about breaking the rules. The rules.
I agree with you on that. I agree.
Right. Well, do you think the ball boy said, well, Mr. Brady, I'm going to let somebody have the ball? Or do
No, of course not.
Or do you think Tom Brady say, well, hey, drop the PSI in that ball?
I hear you.
But we got to stop doing this, Paul.
Well, Bobby, I don't know how. I mean, I will say this. In the pantheon of crimes committed by NFL players, I wouldn't put Tom Brady's crime anywhere near the top.
Right, but a crime is a crime, Paul.
A crime is a crime, but if you want to compare him to Aaron Hernandez or Greg Hardy or Ray Rice, I think it's pretty tame.
No, well, I'm not comparing it to murder, Paul. But I'm saying, if you got rules, you got to abide by the rules.
Sure.
But
you know this, Bobby, and this goes for any sport, anywhere. The great ones push the envelope as close to that line and go over it and then come right back more than anyone else. That's you gain an edge. And thank you for the call. Brady's mistake was simply not being more upfront about it. He should have said, "Yeah, I'm sorry I did it. Didn't mean to hurt anyone." But the problem was the Super Bowl was at stake. And, the commissioner could have handled this a lot earlier, but they wanted to preserve the 100 million people watching the Super Bowl. They didn't want to do any damage there. They could have solved it very quickly, and they bring it out now. It's a big conversation. It will go away in 2 days, and I don't think that many people will be all that concerned when it's all said and done, other than the fact that he's going to miss some games. Rich is next in Atlanta. Hey, Rich.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for taking my call. Hey, welcome back, buddy.
You bet.
We missed you. I didn't, when they said you were in Mississippi, I didn't know you were speaking at Ole Miss. I thought you were in Biloxi and you were hung over from playing craps and
no,
I want to take calls that day.
If you see me in a casino, Rich, it's only because I've gone with someone who gambles. I do not gamble.
Right. You're there for the buffet.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Paul, real quick.
Absolutely.
Did you see the revenue numbers for SEC Network compared to the others? $550 million generated revenue. Isn't that crazy?
I did read the article.
Isn't that cool? It's like 250 more than the Big Ten. That's crazy stuff. Hey, now, if they're generating that much money, how come we can't get the show on the alternate channel when, like, gymnastics is on or the softball?
Rich, that is a really good question, and if I answered it, I probably wouldn't be here the next day.
$550 million. I think Jim from Tuscaloosa deserves.
I think for $550 million, we could probably do anything, whatever the number is. I don't think that's official, but there's no doubt the SEC Network is doing quite well. Thank you.
It's great. Congratulations, too, man. I know you were a big part of it. Hey, speaking of a guy that does take calls, Phil Steele came out with his toughest schedule, and he's got Alabama at number 1. You think we'll ever live to see the day where Ohio State would ever be on the list as having the toughest schedule in the country?
The only way Ohio State would be on that list is if they had received a major NCAA sanction and were so bad that everyone they played was better than them. No, there's no. That's the problem with Alabama, Rich. And I'm still. I've never been undecided this late in a spring about who was going to win even a division. But that schedule really scares me about Alabama.
Well, right, and it was funny because Andy Staples brought that up, and that's what you hammer on constantly when the people ask you for your preview, and you always say, I always look at the schedule, and you're absolutely right.
We have to.
So, no, especially in the SEC. So what do you think? I mean, it has been confirmed that there's 4 teams that have byes before they play them. I mean, I don't know, Paul. I'm starting to get a little nervous. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I was in Alabama yesterday for lunch, and I didn't hear. Again, I will be back there shortly, so a couple of times, even in Tuscaloosa in the next few weeks. So I'll get a better read. But right now, I do not hear the usual confidence. And I'm talking about the real. You know what I'm talking about, Rich.
Right. I absolutely do.
But it's all about that. I mean, as far as the buys, that I really haven't done a lot of investigating on that. But I just I don't know. There are a couple of games that would make me uncomfortable. And I think the A&M game is one that I think is somewhat of a wild card too. For Alabama, that is.
But the thing about Alabama, Paul, I was thinking, what's the staff? About 17 million, 15, 20 million, somewhere in between there. So it's time. You know, they got the highest paid staff
Rich, thanks for the
country.
Rich, I agree with you. I agree with you. I hate to run, but you're absolutely right. I mean, if you're at Alabama, I don't want to hear excuses from Nick Saban. I don't want to hear excuses from anyone. I mean, this program is well oiled.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Truly one of the greatest athletes, maybe the greatest athlete. The late Dick Shep told me while he was working on a book in relation to Bo Jackson that he was the single greatest athlete he had ever seen. That man, Bo Jackson, joins us right now. And, Bo, it has been too long. Good afternoon. How are you, buddy?
Good afternoon, Paul. I'm doing fine. And you?
I'm doing great. I know you've got a lot going on, and since that tornado in Tuscaloosa, the devastating tornado in 2011, you have worked tirelessly, raising a great deal of money, riding bikes, getting your friends around the country, and I know that's coming up.
No, that was actually last Saturday.
Last Saturday, I'm sorry. I know. How did it go, by the way?
Actually, the ride went great. In 4 years, we have actually gone from 300 riders, a little over 300 riders, to right at 1,000 rides this year. And like I said, and just like you said, they come from all over the country to support a good cause. And till this day, we're only a couple of bucks short of raising $1 million. And that $1 million, Paul, will be the 20 to 25% that the federal government requires the state to have to use when they put in these community tornado shelters. The federal government is paying for 75%, and this $1 million that I've raised will cover the community's 20 to 25% that they have to pay. So we're doing a lot of good things, and as we speak, we have erected about between 55 and 60 community storm shelters around the state.
Well, that is amazing, Bo, and I've followed it over the years and seen you guys come through the state, and it's a great credit. And some of the people that I've seen you with, I remember the first couple of years, I wasn't far from one. I mean, you're talking about bringing some major guns down.
Well, yes, and I am just fortunate enough and blessed to where other athletes and celebrities around the country think highly of me enough to where they want to support what I'm doing, and it's for a great cause, and it makes me feel good. It always makes me feel good, but to give back, especially to my home state.
You bet. What's going on with you? I think we played golf about 2 years ago, and you were telling me about everything you were into, and it was a long list of assignments for you in terms of business and
still into those long lists. I'm still into. I got my bank up and running. Got my indoor sports complex up and running. I got my food company that I talked to you about. That's up and running. I've got a couple more deals on the table. Got a worldwide logistics company that I'm a part of. I'm just keeping myself busy, Paul. That's the only way to be. If you're not busy, you grow old, shrivel up, and die. And I'm not ready for that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I ask. I mean, because a lot of people, and I've run into a lot of athletes who don't really do very much other than reflect back. It's not like you have to work another day in your life, but is that what motivates you? Because you know what the alternative is?
Well, it motivates me to the point that I always love to learn new things. And any new thing that I can learn as far as business is concerned is exciting to me. It's a challenge. But I know how to play sports. I know how to talk about sports. So that sometimes becomes boring to me. But when I enter a new business venture, and get everything up and running, that really gets my juices flowing.
I couldn't help but think of you 2 weeks ago, the night of the NFL draft. There was Jameis Winston in Bessemer, Alabama, not too far from where you grew up, being drafted by the same team that took you first in 1987. What went through your mind that night?
Nothing. It's just ironic that within a 15-mile radius in one state, you got 3 Heisman Trophy winners, and Pat Sullivan, the great Pat Sullivan, myself, and Jameis. And it's ironic that Jameis and myself are the highest Heisman Trophy winners, first players picked in the draft, and it happens to be by the same football team. Okay, that's ironic. That's ironic. Actually, but I think Jameis is going to have a good career. He is a talented kid. And I think the country's just sitting back waiting to see what he's going to do with that team. I'm waiting to see what he's going to do. So it's exciting for everybody.
Yeah, I'm curious. Listen, his career has been hashed out pretty severely in terms of what he did right or on the field and what he did wrong off the field. But as someone who knows a lot about coming from tough beginnings, making mistakes, you've been about as honest as anyone in the history of the game. Have you spoken to him? Have you talked to him? Has he gone to you for advice?
Actually, I have not talked to Jameis for a while. Simply because he is getting ready to do his thing, and I am head first into the business world. I haven't spent this month. I bet I haven't spent 3 nights in my bed at home because I've been on the road. But that's just us. I am quite sure when our paths cross, we will talk. Jameis, I see him on Sports Center. Not that I watch Sports Center, but when I go out to eat, everybody got the TV on Sports Center because everybody.
It's okay if you do, Bo. No one's going to think less of you if you watch Sports Center.
No. It's just sports channels in general. I was sitting having lunch this afternoon with a business associate downtown, and it was on. And he was talking to Gruden about different plays, but he seems like he's ready to go to Tampa and to be a leader. And that's what everybody is waiting on. I think he is going to surprise a lot of people, to be honest with you.
Let me ask you about Auburn. Certainly you are extremely close to that program after 2 national championship game appearances in 4 years, a setback last year, but much is expected this year. Your thoughts on Gus Malzahn and Auburn?
I tell you what, Gus is going to get his team ready. I was so busy this year till I forgot about the A-Day game. I've just been that busy, and I'm not exaggerating. I've just been that busy, but everybody's buzzing about all of the kids and how hard they worked and the new recruits that they got coming in. I think Gus is going to be okay. I think Auburn is going to be okay. But I don't have a doubt about that.
Bo, it's always good to catch up. Hope to see you soon. I know you're busy, and maybe I'll just run into you somewhere as you're racing for a plane.
There you go. Thank you, Paul. And you have a nice evening yourself and enjoy the rest of the week. I'm trying to get ready to go out here to walk with Mark O'Meara tomorrow in the region.
Well, good luck.
All right. Thank you, brother.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Bobby Bowden with us about an hour ago. Much of the conversation on his career, some of the near misses, including nearly getting the Alabama job in 1987. But we also talked about one of the most famous players of recent years, Jameis Winston of Florida State.
I think it's a consensus among Florida State fans and boosters that he was an embarrassment in a lot of ways to the university. He won a lot of ball games, probably one of the best football players that ever attended Florida State, but he hurt himself off the field. And the good news is he's young enough to get over that. He just can't make those junior high school decisions that he made when he was in college.
Bobby Bowden earlier in the day. Let's get some more calls. Adam is up next in Tampa. Hey, Adam.
Hey, Paul. How's it going?
Very well, thank you.
Well, I mean, I'm involved in the Alumni Association and the boosters, too, and I think Bobby couldn't be more wrong. I think most of the consensus fans realized that a lot of it was a witch hunt towards Jameis. And, Paul, you've never really been a big fan of his, and I just don't see that really what Bobby is saying as being true. We're the younger fans. We're in the ones at the game-watching parties in the stadium. And to me, I think Bobby's really off base with that, and I couldn't disagree more with him.
Well, listen, you're certainly entitled to that. I mean, that's his opinion, and everyone has opinions on Jameis Winston, but I think his opinion carries a lot of weight because of his status in FSU history. But thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your call. 855-242-7285. Glenn is an FSU fan, and what did you make out of it, Glenn?
Hey, Paul, I appreciate taking my call. It's a terrific show today, and keep up the good work, and I know you guys will. A couple things on Coach Bowden. First of all, Paul, when they put your name on something, I walked into Bobby Bowden Stadium just recently, and when I see his name up there, I respect that. The man has earned that right to say what he wants, and you know me, I've been very, very vocal about the former number 5 at Florida State University under center on your show a number of times, and have not minced any words. Am I right? Paul? Hello?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having a little trouble with my hearing, but keep talking, Glenn. I'll be back in a second.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Can you hear me, Paul?
I can. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. What I was saying is that Coach Bowden and his legacy, he doesn't have to, apologize for anything he says. When your name is on something like it is at Doak Campbell Stadium at Bobby Bowden Field, that says enough. As far as the comments go, you know how critical I've been about the former number 5. I haven't said an embarrassment, but in no uncertain terms, that's exactly what I meant the whole time.
You have been one of the few FSU fans very consistent and objective about Jameis Winston.
Well, I appreciate your candor on that, Paul. I really do. That means a lot to me. But a couple quick stories on Coach Bowden. I want to get away from the negative here, and let's accentuate the positive, okay? I got the pleasure and opportunity to go to a local church here in Middleburg, Florida, which is North Florida, outside of Jacksonville. And Coach Bowden was a guest speaker on that particular Sunday morning. And it's something I'll never forget as long as I live. Coach Bowden talked about being a Christian. He talked about his intense faith in God. He talked about Scripture. And you know what impressed me the most, Paul, is that in his right hand he held the Bible, and it was open to a page, to a verse, to a Scripture, what have you. Coach Bowden never had to take that book and put it on the pulpit because he knew exactly what the Scripture said. And that made such an incredible impression on me. Several weeks ago, I have 2 boys that go to Florida State now. My son, who is a senior, my oldest son, was at a local restaurant, and he happened to see Coach Bowden and his terrific wife, Ann. What a wonderful person she is, by the way, eating. And very respectfully, my son, Dylan, shout out to Dylan at FSU, asked Coach Bowden, hey, Coach, I'm a great fan. My dad is such a great fan. Could you please take a picture with us? And he did, and he talked to him for several minutes, and that's the kind of man that Bobby Bowden is, Paul. And I think you know that maybe better than me.
Yeah, in fact, Glenn, I've heard Bobby preach. It's been a long time ago, but I did hear him once on a Sunday morning, and it was very impressive. And a lot of people, and I have not always been complimentary to Bobby Bowden's tenure at FSU. I've always liked him very much. I felt like he stayed too long, and I I was fairly outspoken years ago, Glenn, in saying I wish he would leave while the getting was good. He didn't do that. You could see, and I know you as an FSU fan could see what was going to happen, and it didn't have to happen that way.
I want to remind everybody also, particularly my buddy Will in Gulfport, Mississippi, about something that, to kind of age myself, Paul, my first year at FSU in 1978 was Bobby Bowden's third year at FSU. That's how long ago I go back, okay, with the program. And I'll tell you what I was getting to with an LSU connection. In 1979, there were some overtures by LSU. And I don't know if Coach McClendon was either AD at that time or I don't believe he was the head coach. I believe it was pre-Mike Archer being the head coach. You might want to correct that. But anyway, there was some, I don't know if there was ever an offer, but there were some overtures from Baton Rouge. Well, FSU only in its third season with Coach Bowden, really afraid we're going to lose him before it ever really gets going. And a lot of trepidation, but a song came out to keep Bobby Bowden at Florida State, and I have it here somewhere, maybe on a 45. I'm gonna kick it on tonight. But in its infancy, that's how much Bobby Bowden meant to Florida State University and the Tallahassee community in only his third season. I think that speaks volumes as well.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Really good to hear from you. Let's continue. Kurt is next up in Bessemer, Alabama. Hey, Kurt.
Hey, how you doing, Paul?
I'm well. Thank you for the call.
I'm kind of excited. This is my first time calling, getting through it, and I'm nervous because you're one of my biggest people I like to watch on TV. But,
well, thank you very much.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that I think Bobby Bowden is one of the greatest coaches of all time, college coaches. But I think he was being kind of hypocritical because when he was coaching at Florida State, he had a lot of players that got in trouble. I didn't hear him say, they're a disappointment. I didn't hear him say Jameis Winston was a disappointment when they won the championship. But now Jameis, #1 pick, going to Florida State. Now he's such a disappointment. And I don't hear Florida State fans calling in saying Jameis was a disappointment. He probably got in trouble, but I'm sure he wasn't a disappointment when he won that championship and made all that money for them.
Well, you make a really good point. He did have plenty of players who got in a lot of trouble, and he was criticized for his handling. Many people, including myself, felt Bobby was soft on discipline, that he enabled players, just like Jimbo Fisher was accused of doing with Jameis Winston. I will say this. He's 85 years old. It's always easier to be critical once the player leaves, and my sense is that Bobby has been waiting to speak out on Jameis, and he waited till after the fact to do so.
And I think he's one of the best coaches in the colleges, but it would have held more weight to me if he would have said it when Jameis was there. It would have held more weight, but don't say it when the man gone. Don't say it after Jimbo that went through all this, and now the biggest coach at Florida State besides him come out and say, hey, Jameis was a disappointment. If Jimbo's your friend, why would you do that to him?
Yeah, what he actually said, he said Jameis was a disappointment in a lot of ways, which is the same meaning as an embarrassment in a lot of ways, as opposed to saying he was an embarrassment. It's the same meaning. Bobby Bowden, I heard him. I was talking to him. He meant what he said, and he said what he meant. There was no equivocation. He praised Jameis, but again, the headline of that conversation was that Jameis Winston was quoting. He said, according to it was a consensus among FSU fans and boosters that he was an embarrassment in a lot of ways. So that's exactly what he said. James is next up in Fort Lauderdale. Hey, James.
Hey, Paul. I got to give that last caller a lot of credit. During Bobby's tenure, that's when FSU gained the moniker of Free Shoes University of the criminals. I am a Seminole booster. I'm an alumni. I'm part of the younger generation. I don't know many, if any, alumni that feel that Jameis was an embarrassment to the university and would trade the last 2 years for anything. I think a lot of it is he's showing his age. I think he's maybe a tad bit bitter of how he left. What I think is an embarrassment is choosing his son as a replacement for Mark Richt as offensive coordinator, which led to his demise at Florida State. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Well, that's a fair point. Bobby Bowden made a lot of mistakes, but people that stay in jobs for a long time and hire their own children usually do. I've watched that many, many times, and it rarely, if ever, works out well. Let's continue with Ron in Lakeland, Florida. Ron, thank you. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul, how you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you.
I'm sorry to rain on the Bobby Bowden parade, but I think it's very patronizing to call him one of the greatest coaches of all time. I think he was one of the biggest liars and hypocrites that ever coached, and he certainly ran one of the most corrupt programs in the history of college football.
Why do you say he was one of the greatest liars and hypocrites?
Okay, because of what he said about Winston. I don't disagree with what he said about Winston, but he had Deion Sanders. Yeah, I don't remember the kid's name, but they had an offensive guard that was the best player in the state of Florida. Kid was arrested twice after he signed his letter of intent for distributing drugs, and Bowden said after the first time, if he does anything again, he won't come to Florida State. But he did, and he went to Florida State, got in trouble again. And Sebastian Janikowski, he was arrested for having the date rape drug, and nothing happened to him. And that happened numerous times with Florida State players up there. And there were so many of them that had from one-parent families that were driving around in luxury automobiles, and all of that's well chronicled. You can look it up. Eric Williams, Sammy Smith, both driving BMWs from one-parent families, and apparently with no money to support that. Patrick McMillan, another one, driving an automobile. McMillan's father or stepfather even swore under oath that the family had no money, and yet the guy's driving a $30,000 Pathfinder. Now, how does that add up?
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
ESPN Radio.
With the action on the court, the diamond, or the gridiron.
Comes alive.
The NBA.
The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
Major League Baseball.
San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
The new college football playoff.
College football playoff national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Your home for the best in sports play-by-play.
ESPN Radio.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Let's continue with I-Man next.
You know, Paul, welcome back.
Thank you.
You got to appreciate a little Steppenwolf. Now let's step all over Bobby Bowden's little commentary there. See, I don't have any cute little Free Shoes University sayings or anything like Daryl. Let's just go point counterpoint with this thing. Bobby Bowden is the original Urban Meyer that literally ran from the SEC. And why the university didn't hire him, because he refused to do an interview with the arrogance he's got. They should have hired him on arrogance alone. And him standing in the pulpit and giving his personal story, that's one thing, but he never apologized to the college football world for that crap of a program and the lying and cheating that went on at that school. I don't care what he says in church. I don't care who he set the tone for embarrassment, Paul. You're absolutely right. That was the most important thing he said, was that he ran from the SEC because he wanted to win a championship in a one-team league. Back then, the ACC was one team, Florida State, Big East, one team, Miami. And he ran from what was maybe the SEC certainly wasn't the power that it is today. Would you say average? Would that be fair back in those times, Paul? Because the power was spread all across the country. The Southwest Conference was still intact. He ran. He set the tone for embarrassment, Paul Finebaum. Welcome back from the Grove.
Thank you. David is up next in South Carolina. Hey, David, thank you.
Hey, Paul, how you doing? Appreciate you taking my call.
You bet.
I-Man really stole my thunder. I agree with everything he said, and I just wanted to comment. And with Bobby Bowden, I agree with everything he said about Jameis, but I don't really think he's got a whole lot of room to talk, because he had a lot of problems with his players too. But the point I'm really wanting to make is I'm a big South Carolina fan. And, we had our problems a few years back with
Stephen Garcia. He embarrassed our school, too. And the only problem I think Spurrier had was he didn't kick him off the team soon enough. And I just don't think any athlete, I don't care how great he is, has the right to embarrass a school. I think these coaches, these teams, these athletic directors, I think they need to take care of this sooner than later and not put up with all this stuff. And I just want to see what you think about it.
Well, first of all, as far as what you're mentioning about Spurrier, Spurrier enabled Jadeveon Clowney.
I agree.
That's an absolute fact.
But Clowney didn't embarrass the school like Garcia did.
No. I would agree with you. Clowney just embarrassed Spurrier.
I agree.
But Spurrier brought some of that on himself.
I agree.
As far as Garcia, no, I'm there's no question you are correct about him. As far as Jameis Winston, I still think Bobby Bowden said what he did. He said all the right things afterwards, and then he praised Jimbo Fisher. But in my opinion, some of the criticism was really aimed toward Jimbo Fisher, even though he didn't say that.
I agree. I tell you, it all sounds like a lot of sour grapes on his part to me.
Well, I mean, Bobby made no bones about the fact that he didn't want to leave, even though I think most reasonable people felt the time had long passed.
Well, I tell you what, Paul, I'm real proud of my South Carolina team, and I wish they could go 14-0, even though they're probably not going to. But I stand behind them, and I want every player on our team to represent the school the way it should be represented, and I don't have any respect for any of them that don't. So as far as I'm concerned, they can all leave if they're not going to, hold themselves up in high standards.
Thank you very much. Good to hear from you, and let's continue with more calls. John in Birmingham, good afternoon.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you very much.
Good. You and Coach B have something in common. Any idea what that would be?
Really don't.
Haters gonna hate. That's just the way it is. I found nothing wrong with what Bowden said. He said the good, the bad, and the ugly, and that's just the way it is. And if you really think about it, if every kid that did everything wrong on every team in college football, would we even have a football game on Saturday?
Well, first of all, no. I mean, that's the nature of the game, and I'm understanding of that. I mean, we've all been there before. We've all made idiotic mistakes. In Jameis's case, I wasn't really even asking Bowden about everything else that had happened. I brought up the crab legs incident from 2 weeks ago, which was simply uncalled for.
Yeah, that was. But, he also did mention that did embarrass the university. And then, hope that he learned from it was what he said, which is what coaches are supposed to do. Help kids, learn, teach, do what they're supposed to do. That really wasn't what I was calling about. I was actually calling about, Coach spoke at our church several years ago while he was coaching, before he retired. And got a big kick out of it. You would have too if you were there. He was, doing his testimony, talking about this, talking about that, just going to town. And then all of a sudden you could just see it. He kicked into coach mode and caught himself almost swearing about 3 times in talking about different things that was going on with the comparison of football and life in general. And I thought that showed him right then as just being a human being, and that's I still think the world of him. Nobody's perfect. I mean, we all know that. But I think all in all, you stack all the coaches up, I think he stands right up there with them.
Thank you very much, John. Good to hear from you. Jermaine is up next. Hey, Jermaine.
Hey, how you doing, Paul? I just want to take a quick second to talk about this Evergosa situation at Florida State.
Sure.
And, the young man, there's a turnover waiting to happen, and nobody's talking about this freshman phenom that we have sitting behind the top 2 quarterbacks, DeAndre Johnson. I mean, you look at the last 3 Heisman Trophy winners, 2 of them were freshmen. And, I heard one of your analysts call in talking about Watkins up at Clemson. And, he was a freshman phenom. So if I was Jimbo Fisher, I would definitely go ahead and give the freshman a serious look. I wouldn't even bring Evergosa because he couldn't even beat us. You know what I'm saying? So why would we even bring him in? And then one more point I want to make. I'm from Florida, of course, and I'm watching all your callers call in about Florida State. I just want to point out, most of the people that's calling in, they're like hours away from Gainesville. So I just want to put that on blast for you. All right, thank you, Paul.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Bobby Bowden, the surprise story of our show, but that's what happens on a live show. You never know where the next big story will come. Not that anyone is really surprised that someone else has criticized Jameis Winston, but the fact that it was Bobby Bowden, and he seemed to be speaking for Florida State fans. I mean, it wasn't like, I think Jameis Winston is an embarrassment. He said, I think it's a consensus among FSU fans and boosters that he was an embarrassment in many ways to the school. So that was the surprising part of it. Anyway, let's go to one more thing. We talked about Jameis Winston, but if you didn't quite hear it in full context, this is what Bobby Bowden said about the SEC, why they chose ACC over SEC.
I was in favor of the ACC. I felt, Paul, that it was too difficult to win through the SEC to win a national championship. I felt like our best route would be to go through the ACC, and that did prove out to be correct, because I don't know if we could have made it through the SEC.
I don't know if we could have made it. Take that, FSU fans who want to talk trash about your one win of consequence over the SEC 2 years ago. Anyway, it's an amazing quote. We clearly misinterpreted what the big news of that interview was. I mean, Bobby Bowden on Jameis Winston is trending all over the world, but what he said about the SEC, quite frankly, was more interesting to me. Let's grab some more calls, and Bill is up next. Hey, Bill, thank you. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
I'm well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most revealing interviews you've ever done. It just totally amazes me, some of the things that he said, and I probably should have waited tomorrow to call in, because the more you listen to it, the more it reveals about Bobby Bowden and about Florida State. It's just totally amazing. First of all, he doesn't know what the definition of consensus is. I mean, he's talking about the people being embarrassed. Well, they weren't embarrassed on Saturday nights when he'd come in and win the game at the end, and there'd be 90,000 people screaming and, happy about him. And then, Bobby Bowden is just so hypocritical. It's just unbelievable. I mean, think about it. He goes on to say that, that he didn't feel like he could win the SEC, but yet he thought he could be another Bear Bryant. It just blows my mind how once we listen to this interview you just did with him, it is going to really, I think, going to break him down. It's going to break down Florida State a lot. And I'm real glad that Alabama didn't hire him. I mean, there was a mention in the conversation about some baggage, maybe his age, but I think the other thing was the problems that he'd had with off the field issues while he was at Florida State. So I think at the end of the day, Alabama was smart not to hire him. I don't care how many national championships he played for. I'm really glad he's not a part of Alabama's heritage.
Well, thank you very much. I would take exception to that only in that I think at the time, and you have to always think about when this was, the idea of Bobby Bowden at Alabama would have been pretty dramatic. I mean, he was born in Alabama. He briefly attended Alabama, and he would have been a phenomenal coach, regardless of what he said here today or what you think of him over his career. Let's continue with more calls. And Randall is up next. Good afternoon, Randall.
Good afternoon, Paul.
Thank you very much.
I want to touch on the Winston here.
Sure, go right ahead.
I don't think he deserves all the credit for all their wins and everything that the team did. He had to have the receivers to catch the ball. He had to have the line to block for him to be able to throw, block for the running backs to be able to score the touchdown. He is not going to make it in the pros. He is going to be like Tim Tebow. He is going to continuously wind up hurt like RG3. And I don't see him making it. And he was an embarrassment to Florida State. What these college athletes, they're getting busted for drugs, they're getting in trouble for assault, drunk driving, all this stuff. And what they don't realize is the youth, these rec ball, high school, middle school, all these kids are looking up to them. And they're not setting an example.
Thank you, Randall. I do appreciate your call. Matt is in Cincinnati. Hey, Matt.
Hey, good afternoon, Paul. I missed you in the anchor chair while you was away in Oxford. I hope you had a good trip. I had a family member sitting in the audience when you was giving your commencement speech in Oxford Saturday. So I had my sister. So there,
really?
She said that you did a fantastic. She said that you did a fantastic job. You were very eloquent, nice, and to the point. And also, she made a Linda and Debbie comment about your big ears. But anyway.
Yeah. But, I hated to take off the cap. Everyone has been through a graduation. I mean, you wear a cap, and I wore a cap and gown on the processional as we walked in, but I took it off because I didn't think I'd be able to find my notes with that tassel in my eyes.
Yeah, she tells me that she's going to send a video, but I'm going to wait on that. But anyway, getting back to the Bobby Bowden interview, and in regards to the question that you asked him about Jimbo Fisher and the way he kind of dodged the question in a way, was he really condemning Jimbo Fisher in the way he kind of enabled Jameis Winston, in your opinion?
Well,
it sounds a whole lot like it to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I don't know. I mean, Bobby was interesting. I mean, he praised nearly everyone other than Jameis Winston. But I think Bobby's been waiting for some time to be asked the right question on Jameis Winston, and did he ever answer it? As far as Jimbo, I don't think he's going to. I don't think Bobby was too crazy about what Jimbo has done either, but that's a little more sensitive. Although if he had criticized Jimbo, it probably wouldn't have created nearly the firestorm as he did criticizing Jameis.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN Radio app. Baseball's best go head-to-head in interleague action when the Tigers head to St. Louis to face the Cardinals. That one is gone. The pregame at 7 Eastern, first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN and ESPN Radio.